Greetings, everybody, BAIO family, and those who are watching abroad here in the United States, Liberia, and around the world. My name is Jabari Lamb, and we have a special video for you guys. I know it's been quite a while since we've uploaded content, but we have a lot of things going on, and what we're doing right now is one of them. We are hosting the History Channel for the BAIO and Save the State, and we have two of our facilitators from the Liberia Leadership Academy. Make sure to support the Liberia Leadership Academy. The link is underneath the description and also is on the live. So if you do that button right there, go to that website, you can donate to the Liberia Leadership Academy. And so, what is the Liberia Leadership Academy? The Liberia Leadership Academy is dedicated to educating Liberian youth about their history, civics, ethics, so that they can become informed citizens to better their country. And I had two facilitators. So, to the two facilitators, will you please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you so much, Jabari, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Saley. I'm a youth facilitator for the Liberian Leadership Academy, and it's amazing to be here once more.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lovely Tiawan, you facilitator of the Liberia Leadership Academy. I'm happy to be here this night, and I want to say Merry Christmas to everyone.
Indeed. So, we'll be having our History Channel, and the focus will be on the Liberian president, William David Coleman. He was one of the great Liberian presidents, one of many that helped build the country, help guide the country, especially during turbulent times. So this is his life, his presidency, and his legacy.
Exactly. So this is his life. This is his legacy. Also, not only was this his life and legacy, but it was a one of radicalness in the sense that he was extremely progressive toward the toward the idea of African prosperity. And how was he radical towards the idea of African prosperity? That is something we will discuss as we get further into his life, background, and it's the political arena that he found himself in and what he did for Liberia.
Yes. Yes, so William David Coleman was like one of Liberia's presidents. I think he was the 13th Liberian president. 13th Liberian president. He was born July 18th, 1842, and he died on July 12th, 1908. He served as the 13th president of Liberia from 1896 to 1900. He was emancipated from slavery with his mother and father in the will of Presbyterian minister Dr. Wardrop. He immigrated from Kentucky to Liberia on the ship Banshee in 1854 with his family Presley, Coleman, and his mother Ellen. And they settled at Cape Clay Ashland.
Yes, thank you so much, Shabai, for giving us an overview of William D. Coleman's life. But yes, William D. Coleman was born in Fayette County, Kentucky, in the United States of America. And before we get deeply into that, I just also want to make it known to the audience that Alfred Francis Russell was not the only president to have been born into slavery, although he was the first president to have been born into slavery, but he was not the only president to have been born into slavery. William D. was the second president to have been born into slavery, and he was also born within the same state of Kentucky, likewise as Alfred Francis Russell.
Yeah,
And
and William D. Coleman was also referred to as a Negro, right? Full-blooded African. So that means he never had any mixed parent. He was not born of mixed parent, father African, mother African. So there's no trace of him being born of mixed parent. He was referred to as a full Negro.
Well, we know. Well, based on records, he was black. So,
Yes.
and here is the record from the ship Banshee that Coleman immigrated on.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry to uh put you sorry to get you backpedaling, but let's head back to the first slide. There's something important to talk about before we come back to the second slide. So yeah, to add up to what my colleague Zomope said, yes, he was indeed a fully blooded African, and the reason why she saw the need to emphasize that is because in previous cases, when we talk about the previous Liberian presidents, we saw how they were made to look like light skinned or half white Africans. If we look at the picture here on the right hand side, this is one of the oldest photos of William D. Coleman that we could find. And this picture was taken by William Hurd, who was a minister and who would later write about William D. Coleman from the Bright Side of African Life, which this picture is from. If you read the Bright Side of the African Life, you'll find his picture in that book. In that book, he gives his he talks a lot of good things about Coleman. So when you read that book, you'll find you'll see it in that book. But yes, once again, my colleague was right. He was a full-blooded African. He was not half European. He was fully black. But yeah, I just wanted to make mention of that. So yeah, you can move on to the next slide, Jabbar.
Yes, he was
Okay,
photographed.
another thing before we go further, I want us to make reference on this word emancipated. So if we say emancipated, meaning they were they were like slave, they had owner, people who bought them, right? So they were being owned by people. So when they say emancipated, meaning when their owner passed out, when their owner died, then they were given freedom now to come, not freedom to live there, but they send them back to Africa. And he came along with his mother and father, as mentioned in this particular slide. And he was not the only child that was he was the only child that was not sold away, because his parents had other children. They were so off the plantation that they were on, but he was the only child that left with his parents on that particular plantation. Just to make reference to that.
Yeah, so William David Coleman had many siblings, and of course, due to the brutality of slavery, families were separated, and as a result, many of Coleman's family was separated. So, a lot when he went to Liberia, a lot of his family, some of his family did not go because they had been sold away. And to further emphasize is that, yeah, emancipated and manumitted. He was emancipated in that will. He was to be sent to be sent to Liberia. So correct. There's a difference between emancipated, liberated, and also manumitted. So it's important to understand that. He was emancipated, he was not liberated. He didn't come off a slave ship.
Yeah,
Sure.
So
yeah,
these are the list of immigrants. These are the people who came on the ship Banshee. So as you can see, they have the county from where Coleman resided and is from and was born.
yes, exactly. So yeah, basically this is a ship manifest of the ship that he came on at the age of 15, which at first glance when I saw, I felt it was a little bit contradictory in a sense that because we know that he was born in the year of 1842, but in the year of 1854 it says that he's the age of 15 years old. So I asked myself, was he born 1839 or was he actually born 1842? Because if you look at other primary resource records, his birth year is there. And the reason why the idea of him being born 1839 could be less likely is because when these people purchased slaves at the time, they kept very accurate records on the human beings that they bought to be sold into chattel slavery. So I just kept asking myself that could he have been actually could he have been born 1839 or 1842? But if you look at other primary resource records that says 1842, it's highly possible that there are two things that could be involved. It's highly possible that him being born in 1842 is accurate, or it could have been less accurate to the point that they had to reduce his age so that way he could go further in school. I don't know. There are many possibilities here, but that's just the way I felt when I looked at his age and when I looked at his birth year. But yeah,
Sure.
once
Yes.
again, yeah,
So as you guys see, yes. So as you see right here, it does say he's 15, and you see you have his mother and his father, Presley Coleman and Ellen Coleman, and you see they also give you the status of whether they were born free or whether or not they were slaves, and well, and any additional information on these on the on the on the report on the list of immigrants that came.
yeah,
So
yeah. And speaking on Ellen and Presley Coleman, both of William D. Coleman's parents, there were false reports that his father died in Kentucky before coming to Liberia, but once again, that is untrue because when we look at the ship records, his name is there, and he did come to Liberia. But when he came to Liberia, he died shortly afterwards, which would then leave Coleman to be the one to provide and take after for the family, which isn't strange because this is something we saw numerous times with former presidents at a young age where they would be given responsibilities at a very young age, such as Edward James Roy. When his father passed away at age 14, he was immediately given the responsibility to take care of the family now because his father wasn't alive anymore. But yeah,
and this is just a
Okay.
closer shot up of that list of immigrants who came on the ship Banshee.
yeah,
So this right here is an artist's depiction of William David Coleman. And
hmm,
as the two facilitators have mentioned to you guys, is that if you look at this photograph and you were to compare it to the photograph that we showed you at the beginning, you can see that the facial features look very Europeanized. It looks like he's mixed race or he's light skinned. He has more European features. And that was done intentionally. This portrait was done by F.R. Bruns of the Smithsonian Institution. And this happened in the late 50s. It happened in the 50s during the Cold War. So, this is important to consider that they did whitewash Coleman. They try to make him look more European than he actually is. But when you look at his actual photograph that we showed you, he's not Europeanized at all.
Sure.
So
yeah,
important.
Yeah, so
yeah,
we've talked about this before. Like the same thing was done to President uh, Wonder, President Dancing. So these things were being done to promote uh, culture and propaganda. So the Frederick F. Brom that did this particular photo thought the best way to promote our culture and propaganda was
Excuse
to
me, lovely.
light.
yeah. But
Your audio is
yeah, your mic,
yeah. Can you get your mic good?
Are you guys getting me? Good.
Okay, the sounds. Can continue.
you can continue.
Okay, so these things were done to promote culture and propaganda. So they felt that doing this by lightening our president will promote our culture and propaganda. But then they did not. They also knew that it was going to affect our history, and then it was going to portray something else about our president. Imagine making
Lovely.
someone who is what has been
Son mon
referred
père,
to
son mon
as
père.
Don't pay. You're
Yeah,
echoing. So yeah. So can you get that fixed?
yeah. While you getting that fixed, we'll just take over
Yeah,
for you
we
quickly.
continue. Yeah, you can continue.
Just yeah, okay. So to take up what my colleague was at, yeah. So basically, we're gonna start with the photo on the left, right? So the photo on the left was basically a sketch by Franklin R. Bruns, who was a curator for the Smithsonian Museum in the United States of America, and he was commissioned to curate a series of stamps for Liberia in order to, represent Liberia's culture, like and everything great about Liberia to the world. However, in previous case, once we saw what he did to the president, we initially believed that he wanted them to make them look mulatto. He wanted to make them to look like they were mulatto or sons of European men in order to attribute or give credit for their greatness to European fathers. However, that wasn't the case because in recent findings, we learned that he wrote in his journal that the reason why he actually made Coleman and other previous presidents to look the way that they do now in textbooks is because he believed that they were hideous. He believed they were ugly. He felt let me let- he felt that let me make them look more attractive. Let me make them look more attractive. And into this time when we try to take pictures, we would do what we call add filter to our photos or snapshot when we take pictures, right? So in this time period, this is what Franklin R. Burns is doing to their pictures. He says, let me touch up on them and make them look attractive. And even though he's saying that, it's still a racist mindset because
Is
yeah,
it
you want to say
attractive or is it attractive? Is it attractive or is he trying to make them look presentable or Eurocentric?
three, all of the above. He's trying to make them look attractive in the sense that they have to look like, in a sense that they have to look almost white or light because he says in his mind, he believes in his mind, he has to touch them up and make them look attractive and represented and representable to the world. And this stems from the racist mindset that he has because we have to look at the time period. This is the 1950s, a time period where black people did not have any form of rights in the United States, where black people all over the world were not being respected. Them being black was hideous in his mind, in his own racist mindset. And even though he did not have the intention to make them look mulatto so that way their greatness could be attributed to white men, it still became the result.
Hmm.
When Liberian youths look at these men in historical textbooks, that is the perception that comes into play. But yeah,
Yeah. So what we have here is we have the whitewashed the we have the whitewashed version that makes him appear to look more European to make it seem that Liberia's greatness was due to whiteness or due to the European blood in the descendants, not their actual black brilliance. And the one in the
hmm,
middle, you have the restored one. This is the one that's been restored.
yeah,
So,
digitally restored.
and then this one is the actual photograph.
Yeah, the one in the middle is based on the photograph on the right. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
it
that was
was
the
restored to make it. Yeah, yeah.
So here is so William David Coleman did a lot when he was in Liberia, and here are just some of the things that he accomplished in Liberia.
Hmm. Yeah, so he was a canoe paddler on the St. Paul River, and remember once again I told you short and not too long when his mother and father Ellen and Presley Coleman came to Liberia. His father died shortly afterwards, therefore transferring the heavy burden of responsibility on him at such a young age. So he did odd jobs just to be able to, provide some form of financial support for his family. He was a canoe paddler on the St. Paul River. He was a carpenter, he was a farmer, and he was a merchant. And before we get to his political arena, we want to talk about his education. As per his education, Coleman did not go too far into his education, but he was very intelligent despite dropping out of high school because, regardless of that, he would still go for classes at nighttime, and he would still, ma- uh, carry out the effort to make sure he was self-taught, which was a very achievable thing at that time period, and even now in today's context. So long as he had some form of formal education, you can say that he was just as intelligent as his predecessors who came before him, even though they had very elite, they had the opportunity to, undergo elite education, to have an elite education background, even though Coleman did not have it. But yeah, moving on for that, from 1877 to 1879, he was representative who then became Speaker of the House later on in Montserrado County. From 1879 to 1891, he was a senator of Montserrado County. From 1892 to 1896, he was vice president under President Cheeseman. And from 1896 to 1900, right after the death of Cheeseman, he stepped in to carry out the remainder of Cheeseman's term, with Joseph J. Ross becoming his vice president. As we can see here, this is his cabinet. As we can see, Coleman is the one seated right with his legs crossed near the table. And on
On the
his
left side.
yeah, on his right hand side, that is his vice president, J.J. Ross. So yeah, this is his entire cabinet. And here's the funny thing. If you look at this entire cabinet, you can't tell who is Va, you can't tell who is Gola, you can't tell who is Basa. You can't tell. It's hard to tell. There could be
Yep,
three Basa men among these cabinet. There could be three Vi men. There could be, you don't know. The most important thing is all these men are there to do one thing, and that is to progress and carry Liberia forward. African greatness, all in one picture, despite ethnic differences, or as we call
indeed.
it, tribe differences, which I will not use because it's an inappropriate term. But yeah, this was his cabinet. So, Mpe, you want to handle this one? Or you good?
Yeah, we're good. So yeah, this is the political career of President Coleman, and Zomope can chime in as well.
So, Mpe, you good? You want to chime in? Or
You getting me?
yeah, we're
Yeah,
getting you now, loud and clear.
Yeah, so this is his political career. It says here he has getting me clear.
We're getting you
Gosh.
clear. We're getting you clear.
Okay.
I mean we can still hear the echo. We can still hear the echo.
Oh, okay. Say
So it
something
says
again.
here,
Okay, yeah, we can hear you a little better.
Okay, we can hear you. You can go ahead, Mpe.
okay. So when President Coleman and his family landed in Liberia, I don't know if we've made reference to that. He and his family moved to Clay Ashland, his hometown, where they were living. So I don't know if we made reference to that. I just thought on bringing that up
Yeah,
because probably
yeah,
we jump over it. Yeah. So
yeah.
they were living at Clay Ashland, his hometown, there where they live all through. So it says here, during his political career, he established influence of the Liberian government into hinterland, northwest of the Simplon River, beyond his homeland, his hometown of Clay Ashland. So we've been discussing this before over and again with most of the two-way party uh, people that were on the party and who became president. So one of the things they knew is that Liberia could not exist without getting influence or without going to the hinterland and having influence over the hinterland. Remember, most of our resources were within the hinterland. So when President Coleman became president, he one of his focus point was to influence.
You there, Zamapet?
No, oh, her connection went out. So yeah,
Oh,
so the basics of his career is yeah, he went beyond his hometown of Clay Ashland. Then he organized the customs department and installed bonded warehouses at six ports in of entry where since 864 only foreign traders were allowed to undertake economic activity. So people could not just go and anywhere in Liberia and just trade. There were certain ports that they of entry that they could trade, and that's all. He wanted to increase government presence in the interior since he was convinced that the future of Liberia depended on those resources in the interior. He, of course, faced opposition with his interior policy, and he faced pressure for him to resign. And then he eventually resigned, but he did not give up any political ambitions. So he ran three more times after be resigning as a member of the People's Party, but he lost every time.
yes, yes, yes. Yeah,
Yes.
and to add up to that, I want us to really emphasize on the hinterland piece. So yes, William David Coleman, he wanted to, establish heavy influence of the Liberian government in the interior region. Yes, because he believed that Liberia's future depended on those resources. And keep in mind, the scramble for Africa is already in full effect. You have Liberia under siege from all sides. You have the French in the north. You have the French in the north and west Ivory Coast at the Kavala River. Then you have the British in the. Then you have the British. Sorry, not west. You have them at the east at the Kavala River. Then you have the British on the west at the river. Liberia is basically under stress siege from all sides, and then you have William D. Coleman in a desperation because first of all, let's look at his background. He comes from a background where he was born into slavery, where black people were not seen as human beings. And now he's in a continent, in a place where people look like him. And he has that opportunity, despite having a short time, to make any kind of drastic change for the good of the country. And he saw that those resources were the change that could propel Liberia. And not only did he see that, but you have Europeans at this point in time also they want to get their hands on those resources. Even though they can't get their hands fully on on those resources, you have another major issue. You have factions, you have what we call rolling wars happening back to back. And even though Coleman, I want to personally believe that even though Coleman did not like resulting to the huge use of brute force to stop the conflict on both ends, I want to believe that he did not have a choice. He did not have a choice because, yeah, you want to say something, Jabari?
Yeah, so of course, he had ambition. He envisaged the emergence of Liberia as a political, stable, economically strong, and financially sound state. At the end of the
Mhm.
19th century, the repatriate population. I know in this particular instance, this was a while back, but the repatriate population, including recaptured Africans, was only about 10 to 12,000, and they were living primarily in the coast, rarely in the interior, barely, if any. Whereas the indigenous population was about they said under 200,000, but it could be closer to a million. You have President Coleman was convinced Liberia would not be a strong nation without the use of the resources from the hinterland. That includes, the rainforest and, of course, the natural resources there, but also the people there. He was following the vision of the likes of E.J. Roy, who wanted to build a railroad into the interior. And then, of course, this was very important because Liberia at this time was facing some problems that included the inter-ethnic conflicts that were happening near Liberia's territory, and of course, resources in terms of monetary funds.
Yes. E-
And
Yes,
those
exactly. So
and those rolling inter-ethnic wars were playing a huge part. So there was a crisis that had been going on years prior that popped up even more during Cheeseman's administration and now into Coleman's administration. And I know those words use the word tribes. We don't use that term like Paul
yeah,
said.
we don't
So
use that term.
ethnic group. So just a reminder when presenting, yeah, we don't use tribe anymore.
Yeah, but to go back to what I was saying, most of these conflicts that stemmed in all different in different regions, especially in the northern region around the St. Paul area. Most of these conflicts that were taking place, the Europeans would see the conflicts in their favor because when these conflicts happen, they would not they would basically try to arm both sides. The more chaos they cause, they pretend to come as saviors or they pretend to come as peacekeepers to have some foothold over their territory and then exploit those resources. I want to believe William David Coleman understood this. This is why, like I said, if he tried to bring peace, which was the right thing, but if peace did not go, if peace did not work, he would use brute force.
Mhm. We
And the
have
British, yeah.
So we have a question from the chat, and one of those
Mm.
questions was they said, "Can you please tell us why you do not use the word tribe?"
We don't use the word tribe because it's an inappropriate term. Basically, it makes us to look like as if we're savages, and we're not savages. Yes, we are clear. We are a group of people who are diverse. We have different cultures. We have different cultures. We have different way of doing things. So when you say tribe, not only does it makes us to look like we're savage, but it's like you're basically grouping us into one, grouping us into one part. That's how I look at it personally. We don't say tribe, we say ethnic group or ethnic clans.
Yeah, the correct way, as you stated, Paul, is ethnic group, because when you use the word tribe, it carries racist connotation. Because notice, when we say French, we say the French or French people. We don't say the French tribe or the German tribe or the Swedish tribe. We don't
Exactly
say
so.
that. We call them by their name, by people, a group, a distinct group. So we say Swedish people. We treat them as people, humans. But when we go to African people, we will say, "Oh, this tribe. Oh, the Akan tribe." No, they're the Akan ethnic group. And so, like you said, Paul, it's important to understand why we do not use the word tribe. We say ethnic groups.
Exactly so. Exactly so. Yeah, and to continue on with what I was saying, so with all the conflicts that would go on, basically, Coleman would try his best to always attempt to strike up peace negotiations between various factions of the region in the mid 1900s, but they would fail. And when they would fail and the conflicts kept getting worse and worse, he would have to resort to violence to quell those conflicts, which drew negative criticisms from his cabinet administration and his colleagues. And among his colleagues, they were Arthur Barclay, Daniel Howard, and G.W. who all later go on to succeed him as president in different time periods. But yeah,
Excellent, Paul. And as you stated, these conflicts have been going on for decades, and happening before Coleman. That Coleman got dragged into his
mm,
previous president, the previous president that he was serving under. Cheeseman had to deal with some of
mm,
these. So some of them were, you had factions between the Gola and Mandingo over trading in in the interior regions. So they were
Yeah.
fighting over control of those trade routes. And of course, presidents had to deal with settling some of those conflicts, like you said, through peaceful negotiations, and they failed. So there are some times where they had to, use brute force, and that created, tensions on how is this the best or most effective method. But Coleman was in a difficult spot. You have the scramble for Africa. You have encroachment going on that's coming from France, that's coming from Britain. He's in a difficult situation, and he has to figure out how to weigh things out to keep peace, but at the same time prevent fighting that's going on. And like you said, he went and he spoke to these leaders. He spoke to these monarchs or leaders of these particular clans and societies, whether they be Pele, Bai, Golem, Dingo, of just trying to mitigate.
Yeah. It's things like this that makes you to understand that in the field of in the Liberian context, right? It's important to note out that the Liberian government were always about resolving two peaceful means, never just resorted to violence firsthand. Violence would only be as a last resort and for meaningful reasons. So what we're looking at here right now, it's an excerpt letter from the colony of Sierra Leone, written by the governor of that colony in Sierra Leone. And before we get into the letter, I want to give some context on the letter. So remember when we were talking about how the British were not only instigating conflicts that were already happening, but they wanted to take control of these territories because they had valuable resources, right? Remember we
Correct.
talked about that. So the British at this point in time, they were aiming to take territory stretching all the way from the Gola rainforest to the Bomi region that's very rich in mineral resources. To know about these mineral resources is because the British at this point in time, they were very good at reconnaissance or spying. They've been spying on these regions since the early mid 1700s. I could be wrong, correct me, but they've been spying on these regions. They've been doing their homework, they've been doing their studies. So after doing their studies, they are decided, you know what, we're going to take this territory for ourselves, and no matter what it costs, we're going to take it. So now in the Liberian government, we have a problem. We talked about autonomous or sovereign nations that are surrounding Liberia, but then again, that's also within the Liberian territory, but they are not subject to the Liberian government, right?
Yep.
Okay, so let's take, for instance, we have we have warring factions that are of an that are of a sovereign, that have their own sovereign nation. They are republic, but they are not subject to the Liberian government. They have conflicts, and these conflicts, they stretch all the way crossing into Sierra Leone. It crosses into Sierra Leone. The British would then use that conflict as an excuse to tell the Liberian people, oh, you're not able to govern yourselves, your people are getting out of control, all these kinds of things. They would make up all these excuses because they were finding any way possible to just take Liberia out and take full control of resources on that end. And then on top of that, they would also send in missionaries into Liberia to open up schools, to give the guys of them, opening up a church to educate, because at this time the Liberian government, they are in favor of education, they are in favor of churches opening. But at this end, the British, they have a different plan. They go into Liberia to infiltrate, sabotage. So at this point, Liberia is really under stress from all sides. When I say Liberia is under stress from all sides, this is one of the examples. So in this excerpt here, you have the governor of Sierra Leone telling the Liberian government that, oh, their citizens are being harassed within the Liberian government. They are not handling the issue. When in reality, the people who they are claiming to be their citizens within the Liberian government, they are the one causing instigations within the Liberian Republic.
Indeed. And
Yeah,
so
Mm,
President Coleman
yeah,
responds.
yeah. You want to come in, some of that?
yes. So can you guys hear me good? Okay, so my colleague just said it all. So you will also have them asking the people, our people, right? Let's say, for instance, the border between Liberia and Sierra Leone, you will have some Liberians in Sierra Leone and some
Some pay
in
there.
the south of Liberia.
Okay.
Do you want to be with the Liberian government or you want to be in Sierra Leone like that? So they will enforce the fight when the fight is taking place. Then they come back and say our people cannot govern their citizens, our citizens are the one causing problem. They did these things to be able to get the country. So the more they tell our people evil things about their government, you decide whether you want to be with the British or you want to be with the France. And so you is going to be in good faith, but mind you, it is not in good faith. If you go on either of them, you're going to be their subject. That particular land is not going to be yours anymore. So these are the problem our government was facing, President Coleman was facing during that time period with the British in France.
So there are a couple points that need to be addressed, Paul, that needs to be stated. So first, obviously, there's no government of Sierra Leone at this time. It's called the Sierra Leone colony. It's a British. It's the British. Okay, the British are in control. We talked about a decade prior. Yes, Sir Havelock was one of the governors. So this is about the British. Okay, and the people in Sierra Leone, the indigenous population in Sierra Leone, they are referred to as British subjects. They are not citizens. They are British subjects. Okay, they're upset. They are instigating situations in Liberia and saying that their subjects are being affected. They are not citizens. They are British subjects. Okay, so this is
Yeah.
between Liberia and the British government. I want to clarify because you said Sierra Leone
Yes,
government, and there's no Sierra Leone
thank you.
government.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. If you could just go back to the previous slide, yeah, just after what you said, yeah, in that excerpt, yes, the governor of that colony of Sierra Leone, the governor of that, yeah, yeah, it says here colony of Sierra Leone, yeah, at that time, yeah, basically, yeah, there was no British governance, it was not a government, but yeah, governor of Sierra Leone, and yes, you're right, not citizens but British subjects. Thank you for that correction.
Yes.
But the
Thank
yeah,
you.
so
So then Coleman then responds. He has this proclamation, the proclamation by the president of Liberia, and so basically, I'll read it to you guys. It says, "Whereas certain evil disposed persons in the county of Grand Bassa have threatened violence to British subjects and other aliens there residing, and whereas such conduct is contrary to the treaties enforcing Liberia, Great Britain, and other foreign powers, by virtue of which treaties said persons are expressly entitled to the protection of the laws and have a right to work and prosecute their several callings in this republic under the laws thereof. And whereas any injury done to such strangers in each person or property without warrant of law must be atoned for by the government of Liberia. Now, therefore, I, William David Coleman, President of Liberia, do enjoin upon all citizens to conduct themselves in a peaceable and legal manner towards such persons, and do hereby order all officers, judicial and executive, to give them full and adequate protection for their persons and property. The government of Liberia will punish with the utmost severity any person wantonly injuring such persons in any way whatever, or which just really should say whatsoever, given under my hand and the seal of the Republic in 10th day of June AD 1899, and of the Republic the 52nd, by the President G.W. Gibson, Secretary of State, and then says signature William W.D. Coleman.
yeah, so like I said, basically at this point in time now, President William D. Coleman is at a desperate attempt to maintain strict rule of law. And at this time, The British are basically playing mind games with them. They're playing psychological warfare with them. They're trying to make them look like I said once again, like they can't control their citizens. When in reality, they are the instigators. They are the troublemakers, trying to make like Liberia isn't capable of governing their country and keeping their citizens in check. But that is not true. At this point in time, the British are they are the villains right here in this act.
Yeah, they're making them look bad.
Yes, they are
And,
basically making them look bad.
yeah, and this is just a brief side note. Um, this is a brief side note. As you guys see, whenever you're dealing with foreign relations, we talk about the Secretary of State. That's why when he signs the proclamation, is dealing with treaties, dealing with foreign powers, it says G.W. Gibson, Secretary of State. When you're talking about things that are dealing with foreign affairs, that's Secretary of State. So we need to make
Yeah,
that note. Foreign issues, anything dealing with Liberia and other countries and other subjects, that is the Secretary of State. And you see right here, G.W. Gibson, Secretary of State.
yeah, yeah. That was the Secretary of State. So you want to read this or should I?
Yeah, you can read this.
Okay, so upon returning Monrovia, President Coleman to defend himself against accusations of the use of excessive force against the, I'm not going to say tribal, but I will say ethnic population. His
Mhm.
native policy was severely questioned by leading citizens as well as members of the legislature, all partisans like Coleman of the True Whig Party. 3 days later, President Coleman tendered his resignation. Among his opponents were Arthur Barclay, afterwards President of the Republic, Charles D.B. King, afterwards President too, Daniel E. Howard, elected president afterwards, and Garrison W. Gibson, who succeeded President Coleman. The succession of President Coleman also was a controversial issue. His vice president, J.J. Ross, had died. The Speaker of the House, Robert H. Marshall, was considered to be incompetent, and the legislature repealed the existing presidential succession law dating from 1873. So yeah, like I said, it goes back to what we discussed on President William D. Coleman. His use of excessive violence to put an end to the ethnic conflicts were distasteful to his administration and his cabinet, and he unsuccessfully could not get them to see why he was doing it, why he had to use excessive force to quell down those conflicts, and because of that, he was pressured to basically resign. And then when he resigns, the legislature they pick G.W. Gibson. It should have been the Speaker of the House, but basically this is a structure of the United States, basically where you have the president, you have the vice president. After the vice president, if the vice president cannot run on behalf of the president of a country, the Speaker of the House steps in. But in this case, the legislature they just wanted to deal with the cabinet within his administration
Yeah, so
and
you
get
have
yeah
correct, Paul. You have an order of succession. So when the
yeah order of
president,
succession.
if they get rid of the president, and so the vice president has died, so then we go to the next person in the order of succession, that's the Speaker of the House. If they don't think the Speaker of the House is capable for the job, you just keep going down the order of succession, and so they get to the point of G.W. Gibson. G.W. Gibson is then taking taking the office, and he's going to serve out Coleman's remaining term, and he's going to run for re-election. He's going to run for his election. So
Yeah,
this is Gibson finishing Coleman's term. He is not elected. He's going to be elected the following year. Okay, so let's make that
yeah,
very clear on order of succession, finishing out term, and then what happens afterwards.
yeah. And another important highlight for us to really emphasize on regarding William D. Coleman's resignation. Not only does William D. Coleman resigns, but William is he's basically like he's basically the last. His resignation is basically the end of an era of predecessors that came before him. It's an end of is an end of is an end of, is an end of an era of where you had men
Okay, right.
just like Coleman that were very resilient and very radical. After
Mhm.
Coleman, you start to see a shift in how the Liberian government runs, particularly in the interest of European powers.
Correct. So Gibson follows, as you see in this picture right here. Gibson is shown in this photograph. So he's the man with the white hat, the wearing the black. He has a cane, and he's to his right is a soldier, and to the left is a brother with a black top hat and a black suit. That is our president, Mr. Gibson. And as you said, Coleman was really the last of an era. Um, Afterwards, you see the full effects of the scramble for Africa get real. Um,
Yeah,
Under Gibson's time and Barclay's time and Howard's time, stuff's gonna get real. So I mean, stuff was getting real then with the conflicts with the Sofa Wars and the rebel clans going at each other. The Golden Mandingo people going at it. I mean, stuff was getting real. Stuff was real. It's also gonna get real after Coleman, and then you're gonna see a change in the mindset of leadership going forward.
yeah. And another important thing to note, when William David Coleman resigns, he tries to come back for numerous re-elections but fails, and he runs on the People Party's ticket. And the People
Hmm.
Party's ticket, they are what's the word? They include majority of indigenous Liberians and recaptured Africans. And remember, they double the population than that of the descendants of the African Americans who reside on the coast in the Republic of Liberia.
Yes, correct. So during this time, you have multiple political parties. You have, of course, the Chewig they're in power. You have the People's Party who's in opposition, and you also have the National Union Party that's going on. So there's a lot going over whose vision of Liberia, the Liberian society, is going to want to follow. So there is a lot of speculation as to why Coleman resigned.
Yes,
And
yes, yes, mentioned that.
some of it is he wanted to make use of the natural resources in the interior and may have wanted to, and of course, incorporate the population there. And there's also speculation again, that we were not there, so we don't know the final nail in the coffin. It's reported that Coleman failed to properly communicate with members of his cabinet, among whom Secretaries Gibson and Arthur Barclay, and then they did not know his intentions and plans for development of the regions in the interior, and hence, had difficulties in explaining and defending those policy positions, especially from political adversaries. And then it says, he distanced himself from his fellow True Whig Party folks, and so that also created some fissures there. There were some breaking points there. So, we got another question. We have another interesting question. Can you explain what a recaptured African is? Can you explain who they were, how they came to be?
Okay, so basically, recaptured Africans were Africans that were either rescued off slave ships before they could be sold, before they could be taken to across the Atlantic to be sold into slavery, or they were rescued right off the coast before they could be taken on slave ships. They are either Africans that were rescued off slave ships or Africans that were rescued from slave depots right here on the Green Coast. You even had some indigenous
Yes.
Liberians that would also recapture Africans also.
Excellent, excellent. That's a recaptured African. There's two meanings. It's not just those who were rescued off a slave ship. It's
Yeah,
also referring in the context of Liberia and the Grain Coast, enslaved people or people who were about to be sold into slavery, rescued from barracoons, rescued from those depots.
I take it basically to be people who were almost about to be enslaved.
Yep.
Yes, so they were actually rescued from the slave barracks. They were not even taken into ownership. So that they, for instance, alone where you have various slave barracks, people they bought from different places, but then they are waiting to be dispatched on the ship. They were recaptured. Those are the people they refer to as recaptured African.
Excellent, Zombie. And so William, of course, William David Coleman uh, had people who succeeded him. He died in 1908, and when he died in 1908, there was, of course, great respect for him. He was put in the newspapers, and and so his memory and his legacy was passed on by his son Samuel David Coleman, who was also involved in politics, and then unfortunately he was killed by government forces on June 27, 1955, after he was allegedly accused of a foiled coup.
Yes.
I put alleged because probably ain't true, but that's for another day.
Yeah. So yeah, basically this is a uh, after the death of William David Coleman, his son Samuel David Coleman, who was just as much as radical as his father and very Africanist, just like his father. He got into politics and he wanted to run for president also, but that was cut short after he was killed by government forces on the 27th of June 1955 after accusations of a failed coup. So at this time period during the administration of William D. Tubman, Tubman at this time, who was a puppet for American interests, sorry to say, even though he did a lot of great things for Liberia, but we're just factual here. Tubman was a at that time when Tubman was a puppet for American interests. um, he thought that he believed that Samuel David Coleman wanted to have an attempt on his life, which isn't true because there's no factual evidence to prove the case. But however, when he sent government forces over to his house at Clay Ashland, Samuel David Coleman did not go out easy. They exchanged gunfire with the government forces, and they took some government forces out, but they died in the end. So he
Yeah,
went out in a radical manner.
yeah. So in essence, Samuel Coleman was trying to save the state. He was trying to save the country. He didn't like how Tubman was behaving. So he was part of with Edwin Barclay. Somebody you'll learn coming afterwards. He created what was called the ITWF, which was the Independent True Whig Party. He didn't like the way that it was going. He didn't like the way the country was going. Same the way with Barclay. Barclay was warning, and so he wanted to basically prevent that from happening. And of course, Tubman not gonna like that. So some moves had to be made, unfortunately, and we know who Tubman is. We know who Tubman is. Um, we got one more question to elaborate on recaptured Africans. So, what about those who were rescued from slave ships in the U.S.? What about those? Are those recaptured Africans or are they not?
Oh yeah, there are also recaptured Africans. There's another comment here. There were those who were rescued from slave ships in the USA, also lived in the USA for some time before being sent to Liberia. Yes, that's true. So, in other cases, when you had recaptured Africans, when they were rescued off slave ships, they would be taken to USA where they would stay for a short period of time before being taken to Liberia. For example, we have what we call New Georgia today. It was actually founded and named by recaptured Africans who were actually in the state of Georgia, awaiting tribunal. When the tribunal was finally over and they were sent to Liberia, they settled in a place where they called New Georgia.
Indeed.
And
I was going to
yeah,
ask, what was the most famous example of recaptured Africans staying in America for quite some time, and then going back to Africa? And that answer is New Georgia.
even Congo Town, same thing for Congo Town.
There you go. So here is the grave of our great ancestor William David Coleman, and as you see, they don't took his soul. They don't. The grave uh, is such a it's great respect, but of course, work needs to be done because man deserves much more respect, and man did a lot of work, and this concludes our presentation of William David Coleman. But I just want people to see, he's still there. A lot of our ancestors or former presidents, especially in the Palm Grove Cemetery, they're there too. But this is just to show his grave, and show ways that we can, improve that and better that, because our presidents deserve more, and they deserve, in my opinion, a better, headstone than what has been gone the years. Uh, but yeah, that concludes President Coleman. Any comments that you want to say about Coleman? Any lasting remarks before we wrap it up? Because I know this was a lot, but you have the floor.
What I have to say about Coleman was he was an African man, a Liberian man who believed in African prosperity and Liberian prosperity, even though he was radical. He believed that Liberia needed to be great no matter the cost, no matter how great the cost. And when we look at things like this, even if we do not agree, we have to understand. We have to understand why he did it and what he did it for. Because even to this very day, not only Liberia, but West Africa, the entire continent of Africa, we're still in that fight for our greatness, for our prosperity, and even our sovereignty. But there's still hope. There's still hope because you have other countries in the West African region like Burkina Faso. They are beginning to remember who they are, and I think it's a great reminder for us as Liberians to not only learn from these great men of the past, but to remember that we are to carry the torch forward as an African person. We need to carry the torch forward and pursue African greatness.
Indeed, and I know one of our members has been in and out, going through technical difficulties. Zomope doing a great job, also known as Lovely, doing a great job. But the thing I would wrap it up with is that these are our presidents. There's a reason we wanted to continue the presidential series. We wanted to do the presidential series a little bit different because these are our presidents. These presidents matter. They shape the past. They shape the present, and they really guide us into the future. And so you have to know your presidents. You have to know your presidents. You have to know your Colemans, your Cheesemans, your Gibsons. You have to know them. I mean, these are our leaders. These were the people who made it. You need to know about them. You need to know what events they were going through, because they have been in situations that were far more troublesome than what we're going through today. And how do we navigate that? How do we work through that? What skills do they have that you could be inspired by?
Hmm.
What mindset, what speeches really spoke to you? This is things that are very important. And that's why for me, learning the presidents has always been a fun thing to do. Learning their careers, learning what they achieved, the speeches that they wrote, the way that they were discussed in politics and journalism, in the press. All of that inspires me. All that encourages me to really hold my head up high and say we have a well documented history. We have a well documented legacy, and it's time for us to sit up straight. Okay, sit up straight with your back straight. Okay, have some self esteem, have that self respect, and say, yeah, these is my presidents. They was about it. They was about it, and I'll rep them all day, every day. So, you know,
Yes.
if there are any more comments or questions, y'all let us know. before we wrap up, I'm gonna read some of these comments. Uh,
Yeah, let's get into some questions. We're open for questions. This can be a
Shout out.
podcast if there's no questions.
I want to say shout out to the great Michael McGarry because this man does he knows so much about Liberian history. So I want to give this man his flowers. Daniel Bashir Warner was born into such a family. Indeed, I mean, Daniel Bashir Warner's story is very interesting. It's one that I've done and numerous others have done. It's a great, inspiring story. I know you enjoyed the story, Paul. But yeah, I wanted to just give a huge shout out to Michael McGarry.
Yeah, yeah, and also want to give a shout out to Mr. Hollitt and Mrs. Farmer from the Iron Mountain.
Yep, and of course I know who this brother is. I know it says All Black All the Time podcast, but I want to give a shout out to that brother. He knows who he is, brother Umoja doing his thing. So I wanted to give him his props. To the Jughead, thank you for tuning in. He's from the UK. It is great to have you back. It's great to see you. I hope you're doing well. And of course, one of our facilitators who couldn't be on but was present in the show, Morrison. Thank you so much. He says, thanks to the Liberia Leadership Academy for this important information. And he says he's following us from Congostown, Monrovia, Liberia. And of course, we got Brother Vic in the house.
Oh, I didn't know that was his name.
Yeah, that was the day he goes. That's the day he goes. I say, yeah, brother. I say Guno Guso, man. I
I
love
say
that name.
Bruno Gusso.
I love that name, man. That
Powerful
name is
name.
so special. That name
I
is
say
so
Bruno
special.
Gusso.
I love that name. So yeah.
Oh, I don't. Okay, I don't think we have
Any more?
questions.
Yeah, I would say let us know if you have any questions, any comments that you guys want to know. Oh, we got corrected. She said, "Oh, do so." He said, "Oh, do so." Okay.
Oduso. O,
Now she
Oduso or
said, "Oh,
Oduso?
okay." I love that. I just love saying that word. I love saying that word, Oguso, man. I love saying that word. Oh my gosh. He
There's a
said,
question.
are there any descendants currently living in Liberia or anywhere else? Descendants of this president or um the not the McGarrys. I don't think that, but are there descendants? Yeah, there are descendants currently. I think currently living in Liberia that are descendant of Coleman, for sure.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know if they're outside, but definitely for sure in Liberia.
There are Liberians in Liberia with the last name Coleman, so they're there.
Okay, I don't think we have any more questions. There are many
Yeah.
descendants of President Coleman in Liberia and elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Oh,
he
there are
said
many
there
of
are
them
many.
in
Oh,
Minnesota.
okay. There are
Oh,
many
okay,
in Minnesota. That is dope.
that's cool.
Minnesota is Liberia Central in the U.S. You
It's
want to
literally
pull
Liberia Part Two.
up
Seriously.
Minnesota. He said that's fascinating to me. Are they prominent in society? Yeah, there are Colemans that are prominent in society. I mean, we talked about one in the slideshow. Samuel David Coleman, his son, was prominent in Liberian society. You know, put his life on the line. So the Colemans are definitely prominent in Liberia. Oh wow, Michael, I did not know that. Thank you for letting us know that. Thank you, brother. Now that explains why that brother he got that spirit in him. He got that spirit in him. That's where he get that spirit from. That's where he gets that spirit from. Oh no, nah, bro. Not right now, bro. Not right now, bro. All right. Well, it looks like there are not any more comments or questions. So again, we're gonna do more of this next week. We're gonna do Gibson, so we will follow with the successor of Coleman to Gibson. That's gonna be great. Hopefully, our sister Zoma Pay will have better connection next time.
Yeah.
I know she's going in and out, but she was having difficulty connection. But I thank her for being on and thank her for contributing early on. It was a great presentation. Make sure you guys like, share, comment, and subscribe to this channel. We're going to be doing a lot more stuff about Liberia, so stay tuned. We got plenty more. Uh, Paul, thank you so much for being
Yep.
on here. This man has been doing a great job at the Leadership Academy, and it's really been a pleasure to have you and for you to be part of the Leadership Academy. He is one of many that makes it possible. He is one that is going to help influence the country for the better. So thank you for being on. And oh, my Sister Say is on. She says, I will make sure to check out the next live. Thank you,
Mm,
Sister Say, for being. Thank you, Sister Say. It has been such a long time. I see you every now and then. I do be seeing what you do. Also, I want to say congratulations to you. I did take some snippets of your interview. So I want to say it's a pleasure to hear back from you. She is a real one as well. And so I just want to give my flowers and shout out to her as well. You know, I love giving my flowers and shout outs to everybody. So this was definitely a good live. Yep. And of course, as Emoji said, make sure y'all like the show as much as possible. Yes. Thank you. And of course, I do have a book. Oh, yeah. I do have a book for everybody who wants to know. I do have a book for everybody to know. The Eyes from Above. Make sure you check that out by Jabari Lamb. You can Google it and you can get it. So, no, thank you so much. So, I'll put that in the description. But otherwise, Paul, I just want to say once again, thank you so much for being on and thank you for what you do. And for everybody, that is going to conclude our presidential series on Coleman, the life and legacy of our 13th president, the second and last president to be born into slavery from Fayette, Kentucky. So if you are from Kentucky, you have not one but two presidents that came from your state. So that is something to be proud of. With that,
mm.
Paul, thank you, and we will see you guys next time.
Next week.
Yes. Peace, everybody.
Peace out, everyone.